Spring Creek Model Trains is hitting the road and taking scale signs along for the ride. The signs that bring your models to life can now be found in Deschler, Nebraska, and at train shows throughout the country. It's time for the Nebraska-Iowa Railroaders Train and Toy Show at the Papillion Landing in Papillion, Nebraska. And to see more of the largest collection of handcrafted scale signs on the planet, head to scalesigns.com. Stop. Don't lay another piece of track on your layout until you have a RailFlow track alignment guide from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Whether you're forming curves, testing layout fit, or hand laying rail, the RailFlow track guide ensures accuracy and simplicity. Now available in N, HO, and HON3, RailFlow track guides eliminate misalignments and wobbly track lays in both straight and curved track. Order your RailFlow track alignment guide today at ohrtracksupply.com. Are your out-of-the-box industries looking a little plain? Tully Models can help. With a wide variety of industrial and agricultural details and a bunch of new releases, Tully Models is sure to have the super details you need to bring your industries to the next level. Place your order today at tullymodels.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com.
ATLP Rewind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. Joining me from Exeter, New Hampshire, Brenna Keefe. Brenna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's awesome to have you. I've been excited to talk to you, and I met you at we call it the Hub Show. I know they got like this fancy name for it, the New England something, and I apologize to those folks. I don't remember the whole name. It's the Hub Show, and it's kind of like pre-Amherst to me. It's turned into a nice show it was in Marlborough, Mass, right?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite shows next to Amherst. I absolutely love it because it's small. They keep really good vendors there, and you get to meet some really cool people.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's intimate. It's a very intimate setting. Got to meet some great folks, including yourself, who came up to the table and said, "Hey, I think I have a story." And I think you got about 2 or 3 minutes in, and I went, "Yes, you do. You do have a story." And I couldn't wait to have you on the podcast to tell it, because you are a living example of what can happen with youth who get involved in model railroading at an early stage and pick up all the skills, all these STEAM type things from model railroading and what they can do with it. So excited to have you on to tell your story. I think it's going to be inspirational for a lot of folks that are wondering, what can I do beyond model railroading with all these skills that I've acquired along the way. And then I met you at Hub, and then I had the pleasure of meeting your parents at Amherst. And I'll tell you, between my wife and I, we both had the chance to meet them, and can't meet two prouder parents of their child and what they've done. So it was an awesome opportunity not only to meet you at Hub, and I saw you at Amherst as well, but I got to meet mom and dad up there as well. And yeah, that was fantastic and a great opportunity. And I know they were excited. So hopefully they're listening to this right now, grinning from ear to ear, and can't wait to hear your story being told by you as well.
Yeah, they're responsible for everything. I can't say anything about the way that I was raised other than they're responsible for everything. They're responsible for why I'm here today, why I'm still in the hobby. They were my biggest supporters, and I couldn't have done it without them. And my parents, they're crazy proud every time. And when I told them that I was doing this, my dad was so excited. And then when he said, "Oh, I went and I met Ray," I was like, "Oh gosh, what did you say?"
No, they were just thrilled to know that you were going to be able to tell your story. So we're going to get into it here and talk about your model railroading journey. And it starts really right from the beginning, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So I started with Thomas at 3 years old. I got Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle, and I think a loop for Christmas when I was 3. And it took off from there. From 3 to 8, I think I had just about every single Thomas wooden set that you could get. My dad made me a rack that sat in my bedroom that had all of the Thomas wooden train sets. And then he even cut out on one end, I think it was Gordon, that went through the end of the station. So he cut out Gordon's head so that's where Gordon sat on the shelf. He made me a roundhouse, and we just my brother and I would dump out our trains, and we would make these elaborate layouts in the basement, not the basement, the living room, and we would get them up onto the furniture. Like, we would make a massive mess. And my parents were just have fun doing it. And then when we started getting Thomas VHS, with Thomas and Friends, that was the first piece of technology I learned how to use, was how to rewind and press play on the VHS tapes. So I could watch Thomas on loop. And I actually rewatched all of them during COVID. That's how desperate I got. And I rewatched all of them, and I remembered every single scene. It was one of those like throwbacks to my childhood. It was great. And yeah, that's how it started. And they took me to my first train show when I was 8, to the Wilmington, Massachusetts show, the Greenberg Toy and Train Show. And that's where we met the youth of mile railroading. I was either just freshly 8 or hadn't quite turned 8 yet. I'm a summer baby. So I forget if we went to the March show or the November show. And we met Youth of Mile Railroading. They got me my first HO train set, which again was one of the starter pack HO sets with the click and play track. And the reason we chose HO was because we then went over to, after we met the YMR, we went over to, they had a booth where you could go and test trains. And they had every single scale. And my dad sat me in front of the guy and was like, okay, which scale should she get into? And they tested HO against my tiny hands so that they knew that I could get my hands around a boxcar to put it on the tracks. And then we went back to the YMR, signed up, and that following year I was at Springfield, the Amherst show, with my module. It was a farm. My dad built the 2-foot by 4-foot module for me. My mom and my grandmother helped me do the scenery. It was a farm. I had the horses in a paddock, and then my cows were free range. And it drove my grandmother absolutely nuts that the cows weren't in a paddock. And I had a little farmhouse. I had a barn. I had a couple trees that were part of an orchard. And that was my module until I was a teenager. And that thing went everywhere. Mostly it was the 3 shows up in New England. So Amherst, the 2 Wilmington shows, and then the Hub show.
To kind of go back, you talked about obviously your influence with Thomas, and then your parents had supported that. Now your dad's a model railroader, right? And was he modeling at the time when you were a kid, or did you kind of influence him a little bit?
I influenced everyone. I jump-started my family into it again. So my grandfather did a little bit of model railroading with Lionel. I wouldn't say it definitely wasn't to the extent that we do now. I had a Lionel set that my brother and I burned the engine and the motor in the Lionel. And that was on a piece of plywood that had a handle, and we could drag it out and set it up. And up until the motor died, it was running fine. But no, my parents and my grandparents weren't really model railroaders. They kind of fed into the Thomas thing. And then when I started with the YMR, my dad was like, hey, that's a lot of fun. And he went and joined the Hub division of the NRA with the modular group. And so we kind of did this all in tandem. And it became a family spectacle. Even my brother, who really wasn't interested, but he was dragged around. He had his own module at one point. He had his own trains. I actually still keep 2 of his sets of trains just in case he ever wants to get back into it again. And then my mom was really into the model building. That's where her love lies. And my grandparents, because they're older, they got into N scale. But it became something that the whole family did. We would go to these train shows together. At one point, when we went down to Springfield, my grandparents lived in an RV throughout my childhood. So they would park behind the Mallory building in their RV, and that's where they would stay. And yeah, it was just something we could do together. We would go camping every summer, and we usually chose places we could go that were near railroads. So North Conway, New Hampshire, Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington up in Maine, Essex, Connecticut. We drove down to Pennsylvania to Steamtown a couple times. One of my favorite pictures, actually, of me as a kid is me standing. I couldn't be more than 3 or 4 years old, standing on the back of a caboose, grinning ear to ear. And that's the picture I like to equate with when I started working for the Conway State Railroad. Of this was me as a kid, and this is me today. So it's just something that we could do together, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about the hobby is that it's shared. It's not something that you need to wait until you're an adult to do. You can do it with your kids. You can do it with your grandkids. It's beautiful.
Well, definitely tax on. I've been saying for quite a while, the hobby is so much better shared, but this takes it to a whole new level when it becomes a family affair, like you've talked about, parents and grandparents and planning vacations around railroading and the prototype, and then, their involvement, your enthusiasm for it being so infectious that you got your parents and grandparents back into the hobby. And of course your brother as well. Mm-hmm. It just amazes me that to pull them in the way they did. Was there any inkling from them? I mean, I'm just kind of curious. I mean, you're doing it. I mean, had your dad and your mom, I mean, what was their, their pull into the hobby? Did they have any inkling beforehand that they were interested in this? I mean, they must have had some kind of idea to get you started in trains, right?
I think to an extent, I think it was just my passion for it. If it was something that we were passionate about, we loved, they supported us in it. And I think for railroading, because it was something that had so many different avenues we could go do, that we could still have our little like pocket niche of something that we love to do in the hobby, but it was something that we could then share together. And a lot of it stemmed from having those shared moments and then being able to go on those vacations where we could go and ride the prototypes, and I would be plastered up against the glass of the coach, like waiting to hear the whistle of a steam engine.
Sounds like some great vacations.
Yeah.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about youth and model railroading. I mean, I know you joined when you were 8 and trying to remember back to that, but what are your memories from youth and model railroading and being involved in that group?
I have some fantastic memories of it. So the youth and model railroading in the East Coast the main chapter was out in Denver, Colorado. And I don't know where the connection was made, but Kim and Steve Lamb met the original guy who started it. I'm blanking on his name. And then came back to their hometown of Lowell, Massachusetts, and went, we're going to start one for their 2 sons who loved trains. And they were the champions of the East Coast Youth and Model Railroading chapter. So I joined just before their first anniversary, actually. So I was one of the first new members, and I was the first girl. Something that I'm a little bit proud of being the first, because I paved the way for other girls to join the club. But they started it, and it became sort of this core group of us that all grew up together. So I grew up with Kim and Steve Lamb's 2 sons, Jonathan and Timmy, the Matthews and their 2 kids, and that's Brian and Chelsea Matthews. I grew up with another kid named Alex, the Martins with their son Chris, and I'm sure I'm forgetting kids, but it just became the group of us. And we would meet once a month down in Lowell, Massachusetts. We would have, workshops for building our models. We would have workshops on how to build like kits. We would have safety lessons. So we had Operation Lifesaver. They would come in once a year and do a whole thing of keep off the tracks and stuff like that, and rail safety, because they knew that they were raising the next generation of kids in the hobby. They also knew that, if there's a train nearby, we would be really, really excited, and just to make sure that we were safe around active rail lines. And we would do also field trips. So we got into one year the MBTA in Boston. We got into their dispatch and maintenance facility, and we did a tour there. That was really, really cool. We would tour local layouts. One of them is Bruce Robinson. We had a kit competition with Bollinger Edgerly scale trains, best. They're out of Belmont, New Hampshire, and they held a kit contest for a couple of years, and I was the first one to win that, and that was when I was 10. So it was a common place for all of us to get together, all of us kids that grew up together, and share our love for the hobby. And it became a safe place because at the time there weren't very many clubs around us, especially the adult clubs, that wouldn't let kids join, regardless of if our parents were involved. Kind of as the youth and mile railroading group got enough of its footing and adults that shared the hobby with their kids would join, we could go over and run trains on those, and that's how I got involved with the hub division. But the youth and mile railroading really was just somewhere that it was safe for kids to play with trains. And I like to say play because it really is playing with trains. And just Kim and Steve Lamb, I can't say enough good things about the two of them. They're wonderful, wonderful people. Unfortunately, the group kind of died after COVID. It lasted after I aged out at 18. And then, unfortunately, Steve passed away in 2022. So unless someone else starts it up again, it's unfortunately no longer in the East Coast. Now, the Denver, Colorado chapters, there's several now, are very strong. And I still follow them on Facebook and follow what they're up to, and they're still doing it. And they're very, very strong out there. Unfortunately, it's just something is really complicated to get other sort of divisions into.
Well, it's certainly one to say that, the Lambs and their legacy now of starting this and bringing youth like yourself up through the hobby, what an amazing thing to do. And yeah, unfortunately, it is sad that we see some of these things hopefully not disappear. Hopefully, it's just what we would call dormant for a little while, and hopefully somebody can pick up that torch and carry it on. But it's also very difficult, and I also see for a lot of clubs how difficult it can be because you really have to have somebody that's truly focused on the kids and not just talking over the top of them or bringing them into an all adult situation. It really needs to have that focus that the Lambs were able to bring in the program. Boy, I sure hope that one of these organizations, maybe one listening right now, or somebody that has a youth that is interested, can pick this torch up and carry it, because it's so important not only to bring them into the hobby, but bring them into the hobby the right way. Yeah. And it sounds like that's what the Lambs were doing for you.
Definitely. And I'm not the only one, and I'm not the only success case. If there's anything that anyone can ever learn from my story, is that it's doable. It's doable to stay in the hobby as a kid. It's hard, especially as a young girl. But the hobby is so diverse that there are so many different avenues to go into, and there is really hard to find some pocket somewhere for something that you will enjoy and love regardless of what's going on. And there were definitely cases where I could have been kicked out of the hobby, or I said kicked out. It's probably not the right word. Maybe pushed out is a better term. But I had champions around me to keep me in the hobby. My parents, my grandparents, the Lambs, all of the kids I grew up with, Bruce Robinson, the Bollingers, all of them kept me in the hobby. And I cannot thank them enough. And I hope to do right by them and make sure that other kids can stay in the hobby.
Yeah, for sure. It is so important. We hold a responsibility, especially if you're not encouraging, don't be discouraging, right? Mm-hmm. Don't be the person that shuts it down or tells a youth that you're doing it wrong, or that it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. It's getting them, mentoring them, keeping them encouraged, keeping that flywheel turning. I talk a lot about the flywheel, right? Yeah. And it is so hard to get a flywheel to start turning again once it's had a stick stuck in the spokes, and so it is important to protect and encourage and get the right attitudes towards youth. It's really, I say youth, but it's really everybody. And I think if we all took that a little bit of responsibility to add a little encouragement and completely remove the discouragement from portions of the hobby, we would find ourselves amongst a lot more people and see those things moving forward.
Yeah. And that's actually how I met Bruce Robinson.
Yeah, so let's talk about Bruce Robinson.
Yeah.
I know he's a big influence on you. Talk about how you met Bruce.
It was the Northeast Regional Convention down in Hartford, Connecticut years ago. So I was probably 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there. And Bruce tracked me down. I think he had gotten from somewhere of, hey, there's this really cool young lady that you need to go meet. And he tracked me down. And he invited me to his layout in Sandown, which is just up the street from where I grew up in Derry, New Hampshire. He invited me to the layout and taught me everything I ever needed to know about model railroad operations. The way he built his layout is meant it almost as like a graduation program so that you become this well-rounded operator. So you can do everything. You could be a road crew, you could be a yard master on a busy yard or a kind of medium yard, and you can be a dispatcher. That is his layout. So what he did is he invited me over. We had a couple like one-on-one operating sessions where he taught me how to use the throttle and work with DCC, because at the time the YMR modular group was using DC. So taught me about DCC controllers, how that works, as much as you can explain to a young kid. And then I was invited to his regular operating sessions once a month on Friday nights with my dad. So this is something that my dad and I do together, is we go to Bruce's on Friday nights and run trains. This is something I still do. It's now 12 years on his layout this February. As a regular operator, he has a little sheet on his door that has the seniority list. I'm about halfway down the page, but because the layout's been up since the 90s. But he taught me everything. So how his layout works is you start on the branch line, and it's this little pocket. Everything else is running around you. There's the fast clock. You have certain meets you have to do with the regular trains. And then you do that twice. And then you go to a road crew. You do that twice. And then you go to one yard. You do that twice. You go to the other yard. You do that twice. And then you go to dispatcher and do that twice. And then you can do everything on the layout. And he made sure that I could be an operator and that I treated the layout with respect, that I didn't, crank up the throttle, which is really, really difficult to do when you're a young kid.
Sure. It's hard to do for some adults. I've seen some adults who spin the dial like it's, and then you run it like it's Lionel trains, You got to go slow, enjoy it. Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I love operating is it's this massive puzzle. And just the way my brain works is like, this is a 3D puzzle. I am in heaven. Give me a yard and I am happier than anything. So that's the quick version of how I met Bruce. And he is my champion. He is the cheerleader in the back going, you can do this, Brenna. He made sure that I had opportunities to go run on other people's layouts, to meet various other model railroaders in the community. He got me into running on the nonstop op one year. That was a lot of fun. I did that with my dad. And even today, this is like when we get into going through my layout, he's the one that I brought the track plan to and was like, okay, this month, what do I need to do? What do I need to work on? And he just is the sounding board of what else can I do in the hobby? What else do I need to learn? Just tell me everything. And I like to say that he's my non-biological grandfather, just because that's the way that he raised me.
Oh, that's so amazing. Yeah. We all deserve a mentor as cool as Bruce is and what you're explaining. And I had my own, and in the hobby, the people that are just as excited and maybe sometimes more excited than you are about what you're doing. When you first saw Bruce's layout, I mean, you were younger, again, trying to remember back. Do you remember that first impression of seeing it?
Yeah, I do. So his house is a split level. So I remember coming down the stairs to his layout. And I think he describes it more as bounding into his basement because I was excited to go run trains. And you walk in and you're met with the very sort of corner of his layout. And it was this oh my gosh, this thing is beautiful. And it's still one of the most beautiful layouts that I have ever seen. And if my layout someday looks half as good as his, I will say that that's an accomplishment. And I also remember it being daunting because it was over my head. I was really short. I still am. I'm just over 5 feet. So it was tall. And I had to carry a stool around with me for the first couple of years of running on his layout. And especially to reach sort of the back of the layout. I definitely needed the stool then, sometimes still do. And he was just, don't be daunted by this. It's not daunting. It's complicated, but it's a lot of fun. And he always likes to start out his spiels by saying, you're here to have fun. So don't be scared.
Perfect. That's amazing. Prior to that, was operations something you understood, or was this really your big introduction to operations?
That was the first introduction to it. And it's just been something that's sort of been ingrained into me. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, that I am there to operate trains. And I remember this being also when I started running on Bruce's layout of, this is fun. Now I remember why I love this hobby. Because even to a kid, running around in circles, you can only do that so much before you're like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
This is no longer fun. And I still actually have a hard time running on the hub layout for an hour, walking around the layout, because there's only so many times before I do that and go, I'm bored to tears. And the beautiful thing about operations is it's always different. You can go to the same yard and do the same maneuvers, but you're dealing with different cars, different problems to solve. Especially his layout tends to have like a sway between, because it's point to point. So one yard tends to be a little bit more cramped at one operating session, and then it kind of flips to the other. So it kind of has like these waves that the layout goes through. So that's always fun. Like one of the last operating sessions I was at his house, I was in the smaller of the 2 yards going, there's a train coming in. I don't know what I'm going to do with the cars because I'm full. And he goes, figure it out.
Yeah.
You're there. Figure it out, Brenna. And I stomped back over to my yard and found a place to shove all the cars. But it's something that it's just ingrained now, and I absolutely love it. It's also a social to go once a month and hang out with these guys that I've known since I was, yay tall. And we're sitting around and I'm complaining about the yard being full. Meanwhile, one of the guys is going, well, why are you complaining? You knew that this happens. Like, he's yanking my chain and making fun of me. And,
that's all part of the fun is the ribbing and that camaraderie that develops. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Of course, we have on our show here, we've been bringing Don Iris on and doing our talking ops with Don Iris, and it's got me thinking about operations a lot. And then I had this conversation with a couple people, and I think it was around Amherst, and about the effect of operations. And let me preface by saying, if you're somebody who likes to rail fan your layout, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And you're still obviously very much a big part of our hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find in a lot of these conversations doing this podcast for nearly 3 years now, and the people that we talk to, and it sounds like you as well, it seems like if you were to draw a line chart, interest over time, and you have somebody that hasn't been introduced to operations yet, it's kind of to me like a 10 or 15 degree incline line.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get operations, it just pivot points to this 45 to 50 degree angle that it just shoots up because of, and maybe that's what I'm trying to figure out, what causes that pivot point or what it is. And either it's the relatability, because now it's what you see from the prototype, right? This is what the prototype does. They don't run in a circle for running in a circle's sake. But also, I think it's that human driven purpose, right? Now you have purpose for running your trains. What does it do, is in the words of the great Don Iris, right? With a nice layout, what does it do? And I think that's what you started to figure out as well, right? It's not just here's some trains that can run around and do this, or now I can actually do something with them.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I love listening to Don's perspectives on operations, and I love his segments that you do with him, just because it makes you think more about the purpose of why we model, and that we're modeling something that has a very distinct purpose. It's the shipment of goods.
Right.
That is what trains are for, whether that be the physical goods of just like regular day-to-day industry, whether it be people, whether it be whatever we're moving. I think you're right, that that's the reason why we're sort of drawn back into operations. And it's Bruce also kind of hammered that into me, especially in the last couple months while working on my track plan, was why are you doing this? What are you moving? Where is it going? How much do you need? What else does the industry need? Like you say that, you have one of the industries on my layout is a beer industry. Well, you need another thing other than just shipping the beer out. You need your wheat, you need your barley, you need your bottles. So what else can you do with those industries to make it more interesting? And I mean, there is the scenic aspect to it. There is the rail fanning aspect to it. And I love to rail fan Bruce's layout. I think it's really fun. I figured out a way to get my camera into a scenery where I'm not going to damage the scenery, but I'm going to make the photos look like it's a person on the ground taking a picture. That's always fun to do. I usually do that at the end of the operating session just because I'm bored. But to go back to the purpose of what the layout is for and the purpose of what railroading is for.
Absolutely, yeah. So you met Bruce Robinson. You've got this influence in your youth and in your teenage years. Where does that take your model railroading from there?
A career. So when I was 10, I entered that building contest for best trains. And they came to the YMR and went, hey, we want to do this contest. We wanted to do this limited run. And, this is for the kids. We'll do this we'll pick one. We'll do this limited run. It'll be fun. And we'll teach your kids how to build Craftsman kits. And I entered a sale house that I found in Maine, and my dad taught me. We couldn't get close enough to get actual measurements, so we did all of the scaling off of pictures. I counted clapboards to get the size, did some approximate dimensions based on some stuff that was nearby. And the purpose of the contest, it was supposed to be a really, really simple building. So in this case, the sale house was square. And so my dad taught me how to do some basic drafting. He is an electrical engineer, so he has those basic drafting skills. I also say that my mother went to school for computer science. She's now a 7th grade math teacher, but I grew up in an engineering household.
You had a good base to start
with.
Yes,
I did.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes, I did. And I entered, and I ended up winning, which was fantastic in and of itself. Yeah. Went up and hung out with Brian and Jill up at their house, and I got into kit buildings. And that's what I did from 10 until, ever now. And then the high school I went to had a program called Career and Technical Education, CTE. And they have, if you can think about just about any hands-on career, they have some sort of track you could go through. So as a freshman, I was actually 8th grader, my mom and I were looking at the list of things I could go do, because a lot of it you have to start as a freshman. You can go and kind of take these introduction classes. And my mom's looking at the list and goes, "You like to build buildings?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Why don't you take a drafting course?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" So I took an introduction to CAD program. And then the next semester I took a introduction to hand drafting. And I loved them. I had an absolute blast in both of those. Because I'm using my hands. CAD is a little different, but still kind of uses the same mechanisms. And then when I was a junior, I took the architecture class. And I again fell in love with it. I was in heaven. I drove my teacher nuts. He is my non-railroading mentor, and again, champion going behind me going, "Yeah, Brenna, you go do it." And I fell in love with it. And we spent 9 months as juniors in high school designing a house. I did everything. So we did the floor plans, elevations, basic sections, a couple of like construction details. But he walked us through the construction process of, how are things put together. And I was like, oh, that's how that works. So now I'm equating the models I was building as a kid to real life construction. And all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I'm in heaven. And then I went to school for architecture. And I was the weird kid that was there going, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I knew that I wanted to be an architect. I was in pure design heaven. Architecture is this beautiful combination of the hobby because there's art, there's an engineering aspect to it, there's a little bit of everything. And I was in pure heaven. The first 2 years of architecture school, I went to Roger Williams University in Bristol, Rhode Island. The first 2 years were all hand stuff. So I drafted by hand and I built models by hand. And I was the bane of everyone's existence because I knew how to do it. I knew how to model. One of my friends at the end of I think this was sophomore year, gave us all like certificates of stuff we were really, really good at. And mine was being annoyingly good at sitting in my chair for 8 hours and making sure that all of my mullions on my building were perfectly straight. They hated me. And it was all because of model railroading. When I was in school, I had a fellow model railroader go, well, how is your architecture influencing your model railroading? And I was like, it's the other way around. That's backwards. And I built these models, and all of a sudden I was scratch building. And I hadn't actually done scratch building until I got to college. I was at the point in my model railroading that I kind of ignored the instructions. Don't tell Jill Bollinger, she'll kill me.
Yeah, don't listen to that part. Yeah.
Even though I'm probably going to send this to her, it's fine. Hi, Jill. I read your instructions, I promise. And so I was scratch building in school, and it was scratch building stuff that I was designing too. And I loved it. I had so much fun in school. So I was in architecture school for a total of 6 years. I did 4 years of undergrad and then 2 years of a master's program.
Wow. So
now I'm working for an architecture firm. I'm not a licensed architect, so I technically can't call myself an architect. Legally, anyways. It's one of those stupid terms. Explain to me why an engineer could graduate from college and say, I'm an engineer. I graduate from 6 years of architecture school and I can't call myself an architect. Explain that logic to me.
That one I can't. That one that's way beyond me. But
if one of your listeners can explain it to me, just let me know. But I was also in the engineering classes too, which doesn't help. My minor was structural engineering because, again, I was raised in the engineering household. And that's just how that was where my brain gravitated towards. And I've always had I need to figure out how it goes together. And in this case, it's buildings. How do they go together? Why?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I work in commercial architecture now. So the firm I work for, we do everything except for single family homes. So multifamily, tenant office fit ups, new construction, industrial. We do industrial. So yeah, it's my heaven.
I imagine 6 years and the way you're excited about this, you're probably not the kid that had to be convinced to go to class all that often, were you?
No, I was so the company I work for, I interned for while I was in school. And before I studied abroad, my boss went, you're going abroad. I know how your brain works. Go have fun. You don't need to get an A. Yeah, I didn't really listen. I had fun. I had a lot of fun abroad. It was a blast. One of the best experiences of my life. Still got an A. I couldn't not do it.
But it's the passion. And then this is what really amazes me. And call it what you want. I'll call you an architect and I'll break all the rules. But I mean, the passion that you had for model railroading young, you've taken that through influences, through folks that walked you down the path.
Mm-hmm.
And then off to college, 6 years, and you're still passionate. I can hear it in your voice. You just love architecture.
Yep.
And all because of model railroading. And this just drives home for me, as we mentioned earlier, this whole STEM, STEAM,
Mhm.
CTE, whatever 3 letters you want, or 4 letters or 5-letter acronym you want to make it,
Mhm.
it's still taking all of these amazing skills that this wonderful hobby presents, and then taking it, and whether it's architecture or electrical or anything that you can pick up the skill sets and run with it. And that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah, and I mean, ask your fellow model raritors what they do for a career, because I bet you a lot of them do similar stuff to what they'll do in model rariting. Like my dad's little niche in model rariting is the electrical stuff. That's stuff he does in his day job.
Right.
But it's still that little niche that excites him about model rariting. And, the kids I grew up with, my friend Chelsea, who was a couple years younger than I am, she is graduating this year. She's going to be a teacher. Her brother, Brian, is down in Disney working for the Big Mouse,
Yeah.
and he works in the parks, but he wants to be an Imagineer. My friend Alex, he went and worked for railroads. He, for a while, was in New Jersey, and I think actually he's now in Connecticut working on old New York, New Haven, and Hartford equipment. He's a manager down there. So he's running trains, actual trains.
Yeah.
And these are all kids that, are in the hobby and still love it, still do it. I follow Alex on Instagram, and he has these meets with his friends where they will bring a box of the click track to their apartments and set up a layout for the weekend. And that's what they do. Like, it's not, when you're raised in the hobby, it's typically not something you're going to lose. Or, you might have a hiatus. I certainly was busy enough during school. I wasn't modeling as much as I was as a kid, but I'm still now in the hobby. I'm still doing stuff. I'm actually sitting at my desk that was for work, but after Amherst, I came back and went, I gotta model. I gotta model.
Yeah.
So
That's one of the things that happens when you go to Amherst. You come back itching for, to do something like, oh, I got to go
yeah,
find my layout again, or I got to do something. Yeah.
yeah.
That'll do
So
it to you.
I disappeared for a weekend, come home, and I disappear into my office. And my husband's like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you not out? Like, you could be doing stuff." I'm like, "No, I want to play with my trains."
Yeah. Yeah. The hobby waits for you. And that's one of
Mhm.
the other beautiful things for it. Like you said, that, you may take a hiatus, you may, take a few years or more off, but it's there when you're ready to come back to
Mhm.
it. And we've heard so many amazing stories of people who have done that, listening to the podcast and caught the bug again. And that's
Yeah.
always really amazing to do. And yeah, you set it aside, you get things done, you take care of life's challenges or whatever they may be, and then you come back to it.
Mhm.
And the skill sets and even the niches, like you mentioned, there's so many niches to it. And you mentioned careers. I'm thinking, like, even for me, my career is in sales. I like talking to people. Here's my niche right here in the podcast, right? I get to talk to folks, and it all kind of just ties together. I mean, I love doing some of the other stuff in the skills and that come with a hobby, but love talking to people, and
Mhm.
you get to do that as well and have that social aspect that you had mentioned, and you make friends for life that you still
Yeah.
keep up with to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I saw Alex at Amherst for the first time in at least 5 years, and I got a big hug from him. Like, literally, he dropped whatever he was doing to give me a hug because we haven't seen each other in so long. Like, I have these connections for life. Like, I don't know of another hobby where that can happen. And I mean, we meet some fantastic people from all over the place. One of the really fun things I like listening to your podcast is, like, you have listeners in Australia, like Europe, you have listeners everywhere. Like, that is so stinking cool that something as simple as a train can bring people together. Like, that is so cool.
It is absolutely amazing, humbling, and it's a universal language for sure. And
Mhm.
people, it's something that we can all have a common bond over. And no matter what you're doing in the hobby, there's always something for us to connect with for it.
Mhm.
So yeah, really, really cool. So you've got this great story, and I hope that folks that are listening to this, if your kid is 3, 4, 5, 6 years old and they're starting to show interest in this hobby, please do what Brenna's parents have done, which is continue to encourage this,
Yeah.
because look, it can walk you down an amazing path. And whether it's model railroad related or not, it's just skills that will last a lifetime for sure. And you're continuing on now that you've got yourself graduated and working full time, and you recently were married and purchased a home. So it's time for a little bit of a project, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So we are currently finishing my train room, which is so fun to say. When we were looking for homes, my husband and I had an agreement. He's a car guy, so you wouldn't catch him dead at a train show, unfortunately. And everyone's like, "Where's your husband? Why isn't he here?" He could care less. He does not want to be at a train show, but he's wonderfully supportive, and he's finishing my train room for me. So when we were looking for a house, the agreement was if I got the basement, he could have the garage, and I wouldn't argue for a spot in the garage during the winter.
which is a sacrifice in Exeter, New Hampshire. In fact, tonight it's snowing as we're recording this. So
yeah, and now having scraped the ice off my windshield a couple times this winter, I'm sometimes regretting that, but it means I get my spot in the basement where I can build my trains. So, trade off, like occasionally scraping snow off of my windshield or basement full trains.
And just dream of your trains and your train room while you're out there and scraping the ice off. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so we've had the house for just over a year. We did a couple of other projects around the house that need to be done first. And then we've been tackling the basement this winter. And then it was, I get my train room. I get to build my layout. And I'm building my layout sort of for the express purpose of getting my master model railroader. Also to have my own trains, but that is the path that I'm using to build my layout. So sort of everything surrounding that. The room itself is just under 11 feet by just over 11 feet. So it's a decently good sized room. And I called it the Spring Valley Railroad. I don't really know where the name came from. It's not a railroad in particular.
Sounds like one, though. I think the name sells for sure.
Yeah. And I'm modeling it after the Boston Main and Main Central. It's the two railroads my dad and I model, but it's not any specific line or anything like that. Actually, the names come for my towns. There's three. One of them comes from Manchester, New Hampshire. The other two come from Connecticut, just because. And that actually has some pretty cool ties to my family, which kind of was a happy accident. But it's just something for me to have fun with. I wanted something that was completely fictitious, that when I say it's my railroad, I'm doing it my way. It really is my railroad. I'm doing it my way. I'll have a somewhat prototypical layout with the layout I'm designing with my dad in his basement. So that will be most likely the Boston, Maine, and Maine Central Mountain Division in New Hampshire. So think of Conway Snake Railroad, that line. And then just something to have fun with. I wanted something I could have fun with. And it's operations based. So it's designed right now to be 1 to 2 operator. My guess is one person can do it working in the yard and then taking like a local out, but it probably is really going to work best with 2 people. And I'm not going to have a dispatcher, which is kind of surprising for me. I'm not going to have a fast clock. Not clock. That's, again, probably a little bit surprising. But just something that, me and someone else can go downstairs and putter with my layout. Do a couple switching maneuvers and things like that. So it's kind of a loop right now. So it's a single point, which is the yard. And you come out of the yard, you go to the first town, and that will have industries and things. And then you can continue on, and then I'll have a slight grade change up, probably 4 to 5 inches, to get just that little bit of relief so it's not all flat. And also it's the best way to get a loop in. So the track will split, and then one path will go up the 5 inches, and the other one will do a loop to go back to the yard. So I'm not able to get 2 loops in, so it's just one switch. So that's the one thing that kind of stinks, is because I did want it to be I did want to have somewhat of a loop for if kids come down and they play with the layout, future planning, that they can just run a train. But there will be one switch, so they will have to learn how to throw, and then they can continue on their way. And the kind of cool thing is that to get the loop in, I have to go through the wall into the next room, which will be my office, because right now I'm actually in my guest room / office. My husband and I are both introverts. We don't do well in the same office. So,
nor do my wife and I. But yeah, that's all. That's for a whole other podcast conversation.
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
tried that when we were living in an apartment. It's not that we argue. It's just like we're in each other's spaces. It doesn't end well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the loop will kind of bump through the wall, then come back into my train room, which allowed me the opportunity actually to have my workbench on the other side of that wall. So I'll have my layout sort of over a little bit, and then my workbench, and I'll be able to have my test track right off of my layout. So that was something I was trying to actually plan for, was to have some sort of either track or siding or something come off of the layout in where my workbench is, so I could run trains right off of my workbench. Because I hate the idea of taking it off the workbench and then walking it into the next room and plopping it back on the track. That's silly. So that's kind of where we're at now. Is I have a track plan. We're working on finishing the room. We just did the ceiling. And then, so after that is mudding and taping and all that sort of fun stuff. Adding some new lighting into the room. And then flooring and continuing on from there. So unfortunately, once the room is done, it'll probably be another couple months before I can get back in there to do the bench work, because we have to replace the drywall in the rest of the basement. The basement had the old like 80s paneling, this like really, really thin and ugly, and it stinks. We unfortunately bought the house from a smoker, so it stinks.
Yeah.
Fresh coat of paint on drywall works with kills, but if it's not, the paneling just it holds on to the stink, and you can't really paint it.
Well, you're doing it right. You get the room set, get it ready, get it cleaned up, and and do it right. I've kind of gotten ahead of myself, where I'm in a situation where I'm gonna have to move the layout and try to finish around it or do something of that. So yeah, you're doing it the right way, taking your time, being patient. And you mentioned patience being one of the things that you learned through, and I think Mom helped you with that a little bit as well, didn't she?
Yeah. Something she's still trying to stress on me, and at 26 years old, it has its moments. And
yeah, sure.
As excited as I am about this layout, is trying to do it right, where I don't know that I'll get to the point where I'll rip this layout and start over. Maybe someday, but not my plan anytime soon. So to do it right is really, that's really where it lies. Actually, we had a whole conversation with my dad at Springfield about just the track to use, like what code number to use. I'll probably be building most of my turnouts and then having flex track as like the main, stays of linear track, and doing it that way. That's kind of the current plan. One, to learn how to properly hand lay track. Also, it can be one of the requirements to get your master mile railroader for the civil requirement to hand lay some turnouts. So kind of killing two birds with one stone there. But it's just, learning all these new things I have to learn. I have to learn how to do electrical wiring. That'll be fun. That'll be a lot of, hey, Dad, I need your help.
I was gonna say, Dad, there's Dad to help you out. And I'm sure Dad's learned a lot from you as well.
Yeah. It's just, this is something that we share together. We get really excited about, playing with our trains together. We're getting ready for the NER convention that will be in Concord, New Hampshire, which is right up the street from where I live. And we're hoping to do a couple clinics together, talking about growing up in the hobby and it being something that the two of us do together. This is something that I've done with my entire family. I have other interests that I share with my mom, like with our dogs and crafting and that sort of stuff. But model railroading really is the hobby that I share with my dad. And that's something that I wouldn't give up in a million years, that this is something I can do with my dad. Having friends that, aren't really close with their dads, and I don't understand not having that bond and not being able to call him and go, hey, I I thought of this. This is really, really cool. We should go do this. And having those really special moments. He's been my partner in all of this, and I loved sharing it with him. And I'm really excited to be doing my own layout and figuring out a little bit of it on my own, but knowing that this is something that I share with him, that's just really special.
Well, it certainly is something that started right from the beginning in your very young years all the way up to now, and still being able to have that. It's really a credit to the entire family and their willingness to support it,
Mm-hmm.
your willingness to continue sharing it. It's just a great story from really beginning to now. And I just look forward to watching this as you continue to grow on your layout and you help your dad with his. And yeah, just an awesome story all around. I'm really glad that you took the time to come here and tell us your story. So thank you, Brenna, for coming on Around the Layout and sharing it with us.
Thank you so much. If this can reach one person that will help a kid stay in the hobby, it be something that they get to go do together, I will have accomplished something. So that's my only hope.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.